Okay, welcome back, folks. We are going to now take up H 248, an act relating to supplemental child care grants and the Child Care Financial Assistance Program. This morning, we are going to hear from Sarah Kenny, who is the Chief Policy Officer at Let's Grow Kids, and Aaron Roche from First Children's Finance. And welcome, Sarah.
Yeah.
Been a while since you've been in the witness chair.
This is my first time in this biennium. It's exciting. I'm very happy to be with you.
I think it's probably helpful because we have a number of our members who might not be as familiar with Let's Grow Kids, and you may be planning to do this already, but to give a little bit of background about why is Let's Grow Kids even interested in this bill?
Great, I will. I wasn't planning to, but I'm happy to.
Okay.
Yeah. So I am Sarah. Been happy to meet you all this year. I am the Chief Policy Officer at Let's Grow Kids. We are the statewide movement in support of affordable quality childcare for all Vermont's children. We were launched in 2015 as a 10-year campaign to move forward meaningful change in the state legislature in support of ensuring access to affordable quality childcare for all Vermont children. And we are in our 10th year right now, so we will be officially sunsetting later this year. And it's been really exciting to work alongside leaders in this building, like this committee in particular, over the past several years to move forward, not just Act 76, which passed in 2023, but lots of sort of incremental, really important bills leading up to that as well, which I'll talk about a little bit this morning. So I am here today to start by saying that it's working. And I know you had a chance earlier this year in part of your accountability work to hear from folks about how impressive the implementation of Act 76 has been around the state. It's been really exciting for me personally, just because I've worked on this issue for a really long time, but also as somebody who has worked directly with early childhood educators and parents around the state over the last many years to support them and lifting up their voices, to talk to policymakers about the importance of this issue. It's been so heartening to hear from a lot of those same people about how different their lives are now. And that's been really incredible. And we hear at Let's Grow Kids at least once a week from some parent around the state who is like astonished at how different their lives are now that they are not spending quite so much on childcare. And by not quite so much, I mean like going from spending 50% of their income on childcare to like, less than 10% of their income. And they are able to invest in their families. They're able to finally trade in that car. They're able to fix their roofs. They're able to start saving for their children's college. They're just, the burden that is lifted off of working families is phenomenal. And that is thanks in large part to the work that this committee has done over a lot of years. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to talk more about Let's Grow Kids and kind of what we've been up to in support of that work for a long time. But I do want to just say that we are in full support of H 248. It makes important technical changes that build on the success of Act 76 and continue to strengthen the childcare system in Vermont. As I said, Act 76 is making Vermont more affordable for families. It's improving access to childcare. It's better supporting early childhood educators. It's bringing down the cost of childcare for literally thousands of Vermont families around the state, bringing more parents into the workforce, making it easier for businesses to hire and retain staff. When a state undertakes something like this legislature did and really invests in a meaningful way into a public good like childcare, it's really incredible to see kind of the ripple effects that has in many facets of our communities. And it's only just beginning, right? We're going to continue to see that. And that's why we talked to this committee earlier this year about the importance of continuing those investments and not undermining them as the governor had proposed to do. So we are making real progress towards solving the childcare crisis in Vermont. Family enrollment in Childcare Financial Assistance Program has increased by 40% since the changes in Act 76 went into effect. And that is a huge jump in a system like that. Public investment has helped to open over 100 new childcare programs and created 600 net additional childcare spaces for infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And Aaron Roche, who you're going to hear from in a little bit, can talk to you more about what that expansion has looked like around the state because her team has really been supporting that work. Those program openings and expansions have created over 230 new jobs in the early childhood education sector in Vermont. So it's been, as I said, really exciting. So go team. It's wonderful. And we still have gaps, right? Our work is not done here. But it's really, it feels like the momentum is there to continue that really good work. And you're starting to see the changes happen on the ground.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Do you have any data on the impact? Because one of the other impact points was to increase the wages of and benefits of early childcare and early education and learning professionals. And do you have any data about that?
Such a great question. We have anecdotal data that I have anecdotal data. We have definitely heard from childcare programs around the state who have been increasing wages. And it's amazing that Act 76 has allowed them to do that because you increase the reimbursement rates that the state pays to those programs on behalf of families who are enrolled in CCFAP. And so that allows programs in turn to raise wages. So we definitely hear from childcare programs that they've been able to do that. We don't have statewide data about what programs are paying their staff. Erin is also a good person to ask about this because their program does a lot of business technical assistance with childcare programs and like analyzes budgets. So she can talk a little more about that. But the state does not, because we're talking about, 1,000 individual nonprofits and small businesses around the state, we don't currently collect, I don't think anyway, all of the, like what they're paying all the different employees in their programs. So what we have is anecdotal, and then we have sort of samples that Erin and her team have taken for programs about what wages look like.
So I'm going to challenge you a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so in Let's Grow Kids materials, pushing for the changes that have been made and continuing changes, there was always quoted the salary levels of people in this field and how far below they were,
Yes.
What they should be. And I don't think really we didn't see any pushback on that.
Yeah.
But I'm suspecting that came from the tax department in some fashion.
Average wages in field.
Right, of looking at certain job categories. So I'm going to put a challenge out to you before you
I love a challenge.
Wrap that up or whatever you're doing, because that's really one of the goals. And maybe working between Let's Grow Kids, the department, and Building Bright Futures, because that's one of the pieces of data that we need to see.
Sorry, I should clarify that. I think we do have average wage data, like for a person who is in the field broadly, but it tends to lag behind. So I don't know that we have updated, like we don't know right now, I would say, what programs are paying their staff. And as I said, Erin may have more data about what the programs that they're working with are paying right now. But I don't know that, and I can certainly look into this, absolutely. But because the bill is still so new, we don't have a statewide data point.
Right, I get that. But I guess I would encourage that whatever data source you used for that previous information, that was part of the whole campaign, to look to that source of information, because that would hopefully help us compare apples to apples.
Absolutely.
So that would be helpful.
And in Act 76, you all also tasked Building Bright Futures as the data and accountability measure. And I know that they are looking at that as well. Our challenge right now is that it is still so new that we are, as I said, we're collecting samples wherever we can. We're collecting lots of great stories. And we are hearing from programs that they have been increasing wages, but we don't have that the new, it used to be, right? That the average wage was whatever, under $15.
It was under $15.
We're hearing now that it's more like, $18 to $20 an hour, depending on what position you're in.
Right.
And some even higher than that, which is incredible. It's still less than you make at the Bagel Bakery on Church Street in Burlington. So, we're still catching up, I think. But the fact is that programs are able to pay more now than they were before. And that's progress.
And we definitely have heard previous testimony that, before when programs would advertise, they would, find it difficult to actually recruit people. And because of the wages being paid, they actually were able to. I remember when we did a site visit last year, a person that we visited in Winooski, I can't remember exactly where it was, but in Chittenden County someplace.
Yeah.
Or St. Albans, maybe. St. Albans, it was St. Albans, yeah, now that I think about it. They said, well, we actually can choose from qualified
Yeah,
candidates,
exactly.
yeah, so,
Yeah, which is amazing.
yeah.
So that we are definitely making progress there. I would say we hear that the hiring is still certainly a challenge, right? It's easing a little bit. And yes, there may be multiple applicants for a position, which is incredible. And in other places, they're still really struggling to hire. And I talk all the time to directors who are like, I would come to that meeting, except I'm covering classrooms. And I'm always covering classrooms because somebody is always out sick or we lose a teacher and it takes a long time to hire. So as I said, we're making incredible progress and the work is not done yet, right? We still talk to programs who are struggling to hire. We know early childhood educators' wages have started to rise, as we were just saying. We don't have the magical new data point about that yet, but we know that they're starting to rise, and we also know that programs are still struggling to hire in a lot of the state. Wages are rising, but maybe not quite as on pace with what other fields may be able to pay. And we still hear all the time from families who are not eligible yet for childcare financial assistance. So there's more work to do, but it's working. It's really exciting.
Representative Bishop.
With respect to those, the families, the impact on the families, you said some still don't qualify.
Right.
I did hear, and it's anecdotal, so how wide, I can't tell you, but some folks have shared that some centers saw the increase that families were receiving, or that more families were going to be eligible, and the childcare provider raised their rates, knowing that the families would have more resources. Is that something that you've received any feedback on? And if so, any sense as to whether that was widespread or just incidental?
Yeah, well, so I think the change that CCFAP made was to the reimbursement rates that the state pays to programs on behalf of children. So
Right.
we know that for decades, rates at childcare programs were artificially suppressed, right? Because families couldn't afford to pay any more. And staff at programs couldn't afford to make any less. So that's why we've had this childcare crisis for so long. So part of the strength of Act 76 is that it acknowledged what does it actually cost to operate a childcare program, right? What is the actual cost of care for a child in a program, and started to increase those reimbursement rates paid to programs to more. We're not there yet, right? We're not to the true cost of what it costs to run a high quality childcare program, but we're certainly way closer than we were. So the state has officially acknowledged this is what it actually costs to provide childcare. And so for a lot of programs, the state is actually paying that for a lot of children in those programs. There are definitely still families who don't qualify. And yes, there are programs who raise their rates, not always to the same rate as the state, but who raise their rates because they hadn't been able to for so long. So there are definitely families out there who are seeing increased rates at their childcare programs, but are not yet eligible for CCFAP. And so for those families, it's a struggle. And that's based on income, right? So some families don't quite meet the income eligibility threshold, but you have to remember there are also still service needs for CCFAP. So it's still a program that is linked to work, education, or other kinds of family needs. And Vermont, to our credit, the state has expanded that list of potential service needs far beyond what the federal government, would have us do, and beyond what a lot of other states do. But there are still a lot of families who we hear from who don't qualify for whatever reason. And I know the Child Development Division has been doing work over the past several months to look at, talk to all the eligibility specialists around the state and hear who's not qualifying right now, what are the reasons, and are there ways that we can look at, the service needs and the rules and expand those to make sure folks are more eligible. But we definitely still have families who are not eligible.
You represent Steady.
And piggybacking off him, this has been the domino effect for many years. Once a program, Section 8, rents were pretty good. Then once Section 8 went in and landlords said, hey, the state's going to give us this money, then it affected the people that do pay out of pocket. And this, I call it the domino effect, because legislators and anybody doesn't think of that future struggle for people that don't qualify. Like the daycares raising their rents because all of a sudden we have Act 76 and they're going to pay all this money, and then it affects the people that are struggling to pay. And this has happened for years. Section 8 is what raised all the rents. I was around when that all started.
I
So
can't,
it's the domino effect.
I can't really speak to Section 8, although I
No,
know
I
lots
can.
of families who have thrived only because they had access to Section 8 support for their
I'm not
housing.
saying
But
that. I'm saying landlords, not the people on Section 8. Landlords took advantage of it, not the.
yeah, I don't want to debate Section 8 policy, but I do think that there is, what I do know is that Act 76 is supporting a lot more families to be able to access childcare who were not before. Really, the rates that we all should have been paying for childcare for a really long time should have been much higher, right? If we were paying what it actually costs to deliver the service. And I think who's been bearing this burden for a very long time is families like mine that never, like, didn't find childcare until my child was almost 2, because there was such scarcity, because it was such a broken system, right? And it's the people working in those childcare programs who have been paid peanuts, like $14 an hour for a very long time, with like 20 years of experience in the field. And that was unconscionable, right? So the investment that the state is making has helped to change all of those factors. And there are still families who are left out, and some of those families, and a lot of programs that are figuring out how to provide scholarships for those families who are not on CCFAP. That's mostly nonprofits who are fundraising, right? So we haven't fully solved this puzzle yet. But there are so many more families who are receiving assistance, and that is a triumph, I would say.
It's just
Yeah.
bad.
Sarah, I'd like to ask you a specific question
Can
about,
I just apologize? I have guests coming today and I have to leave. It's not because of you.
Okay, oh, page 248, that's what I'll.
one of the things that is a new addition that is not federally, the result of federal changes in the rules is on at the bottom of page 1, at the top of page 2, regarding providing extraordinary financial relief to childcare programs that are in the process, that either are or are in the process of becoming licensed or registered.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering if you have any particular experience, with programs, because I know that, some of the supports that Let's Grow Kids has provided in the way of technical assistance and things like that to other providers. I'm just wondering your thoughts about that particular provision.
Yeah, thanks for asking. We do support that section of the bill. And I think one of the examples, I think that Deputy Commissioner McLaughlin actually raised with you all, which we heard about, which was the program that had was just about to open, right? And had some flooding, I think related to plumbing stuff or whatever. But so for those who don't know, Let's Grow Kids, in addition to doing advocacy and sort of movement building on behalf of childcare, we also have a programs team that has been providing technical assistance and working directly with childcare programs for even longer than our campaign has been around. And so through that, I've gotten to work with lots of folks who are all former early childhood educators who are helping childcare programs to figure out how to stay afloat, basically. And so I do remember when that incident happened and there was this scramble, because we used to administer the state grants for capacity building in the state, and had some philanthropic resources over the years to be able to sort of pitch in when emergencies arise. And so I remember that particular instance rising up, and we were all like, well, why? It feels like this is the perfect opportunity to use those emergency financial relief dollars. Like, we don't have any grant funds left. Nobody's got grant funds. And these small emergencies around, or it feels like a massive emergency for that program, right? And in that case, it was new childcare spaces that were going to be opening that would have been at risk, and no community can afford to lose childcare spaces right now. So it felt like a perfect opportunity to use those emergency financial resources. And then we heard that they weren't eligible just because they were like 1 week away from actually having children on site. Seemed silly. That when you're in that predicament, that's exactly the kind of situation that those financial relief dollars were meant for. So, and Erin, again, can speak more to this because her team is, again, working with childcare programs all the time. And I know that they are often involved in moments like that, where they're trying to figure out what resources are available to support a program. And often those emergency financial relief dollars are the best. That's the best solution, because it's also then tied to the state regulatory agency, right? Who's going to be the one supporting them, to open and licensing them and everything. So I think it does make sense to me to include it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
There's questions.
Well, there's one more piece that I was going to ask.
Oh, okay.
to Add into the bill. Sorry, I've only gotten through the like, it's awesome. No, it's great.
We like to stop the witness after they say it's awesome.
Yes, I fully appreciate that. Well, we have one more awesome idea for you, which has no money attached, just asking CDD to run the numbers on something. So I think, so as we've been talking about, the state has made this incredible public investment in childcare in Vermont, and we are still very reliant on federal funds to also support our childcare program, right? So that's why H248 is in front of you, because the Child Care Development Fund, which supports all states with our various financial assistance programs, had new rules put into place the beginning of 2024, which are great. And so we want the state to be able to comply with those. And one of the pieces that's not in H248 is another component of the new final rule, which says that for, let me back up a step. So we have the state dollars and we have federal dollars that come into the state. The Child Care Development Fund dollars are applied to a smaller universe of families, right? As we were saying, Vermont has expanded broadly what our child care financial assistance program covers. That's paid for by state dollars. And then there's a smaller universe of families who are covered by those federal dollars. Those can only cover families who earn up to 85% of the state median income, which is, I think, like a little over 325% of the federal poverty level. So the federal dollars can cover those families and then on a more limited category of service needs. But those federal dollars are crucial to be able to support those families. So then we can layer on the state dollars and support all the families we currently are. So it's really important to come into compliance with that federal rule so we don't risk losing those dollars for those families. One of the federal rules is that for that smaller universe of families being funded by the federal dollars, that the state needs to ensure that those families are spending no more than 7% of their income on childcare. We're not currently in compliance with that. There are currently families earning up to 85% of state median income who are spending more than 7% of their income on their childcare, on their weekly family share, which is the state does this calculation to determine what's the family's copay basically going to be, what's the family share of their weekly childcare cost. And that the way that the state calculates that right now is on this like flat tier system. So if you make between X and Y, then you spend your family share is $50 a week, for example. And if you're in the next band, then your family share is $75 per week. So we are not currently in compliance with that 7% restriction. And then in Act 45 of 2021, which was one of the earlier big landmark childcare bills that happened in Vermont, and then again in Act 76 of 2023, the state has said the goal is that no family spends more than 10% of their income on childcare. The feds have for a number of years said 7% is really the big goal, that no family spends more than 7% of their income. Vermont, I think, in looking at it was like, well, we're not even close to that yet. So what's a realistic goal for us to try to achieve? And 10%, was a good one. It's what they used to say. So anyway, so the state has set 10% as the goal. And we're also not there yet, even within the universe of families who are currently eligible for CCFAP. There are families who are spending up to like 15% of their income on childcare. So we're not proposing that you make that change right now to like make nobody spending more than 7% or nobody spending more than 10%. But what will be really helpful, I think, for you all in the future to be able to measure the progress that we're making is to ask CDD to run the numbers around what would it cost to actually make sure that no family under 85% of state median income is spending more than 7% of their income. And then what would it cost to say no family who's receiving CCFAP is broadly, the rest of those families are spending more than 10% of their income on childcare. And I think that CDD is already planning to do this analysis.
I think they already actually have an RFP out.
Yeah.
For this already.
So I think it would be great to put something in the bill that just asks them to officially report back to you all about what that would cost. And that just so that the legislature is also like remembering that this is a goal that we're trying to achieve. And also, I personally, I think we all rely a lot on leadership at DCF and at CDD, and they're doing incredible work. And heaven forfend, something should happen and we have different leadership. I would just want this to be a goal that's established, not just by the federal rule, but also by by a report back to you all. And another component of that is the The scale that CDD currently uses, as I said, is these flat tiers, right? And the problem with that is that it makes it more challenging to determine what percent of a family's income they're spending on childcare. And so it's just a little bit harder to sort of track how well we're doing according to those benchmarks. And it's also a less equitable way to do it because the families who are at the lower end of each of those bands are actually spending a higher percentage of their income on childcare than the people at the higher end of each of those income bands. It's a small difference, but it's still a difference. And so just a more smooth progressive sliding scale is just it's just a better way to calculate that. I think the barrier to shifting that has been IT in the past. And now that there's an IT transformation underway at CDD, we think it totally makes sense to, as the next module of the IT system is being developed, to look at what would it take to actually shift to that kind of a sliding scale system. So we would also ask you to suggest to CDD that they analyze that in this next module as a different way of calculating those family shares.
So typically, when people have things that they want to change in the bill, they might actually come with language.
I have a little piece at the end of my written testimony that I sent to you that says, we recommend that you amend to direct CDD to report to the General Assembly by December of 2025 on any funding needed to comply with this federal rule, like the 7%, and any necessary IT changes, as well as any funding needed to ensure that no family receiving CCFAP spends more than 10% of their income on childcare. And I have that language sort of more legislatively drafted. But
I'm sorry,
happy to
I
share.
had not refreshed, so I
Oh, no,
did not see your, I did not.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, in your defense, I just sent it like 45 minutes ago. Sorry, Lori.
Okay. All right, thank you. Do people have any other further questions for Sarah right at this moment in time? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you all again for your leadership
Thank you.
on this, and we are available to you to go.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, and I see Erin has joined us via Zoom. Good morning.
Hi, everyone. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. I think this is your first time testifying in our committee this session, at least. So we'll just do a brief round of introductions so you know who all is in the room because it's sometimes difficult to see. And we'll start with Representative Nielsen.
That was it.
Just so that she would know.
All right. Good morning, Representative Nielsen. I represent Brandon Forest.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zon Eastis. I represent Guilford and Vernon at the bottom of the state.
Hello, my name is Esme Cole and I represent Hartford.
Hi, Jubilee McGill from Bridport, and I also represent Middlebury, New England, and Woodbridge.
Hi, Erin. Ray Garofano, Essex Junction. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Teresa Wood from Waterbury, and I also serve Bolton, Beals, Gore, and Huntington.
Morning, Ann Donahue from Northfield, also represent Berlin.
Good morning, Dan Noyes. I represent Wolcott, Hyde Park, Johnson, and Belvedere.
Doug Bishop, I represent Colchester's Chittenden 20 District.
Matt?
Matt Levin, Executive Director of Vermont Early Childhood Advocacy.
I'm Catherine Levester, and I'm here with most of our kids today.
Nick Adams with Action Circles.
And we just heard from Sarah
Yes.
and
Lori Morris, Community Assistant.
thank you, Erin. Thank you for being here this morning. As you know, we're taking up H248. I hope that you're able to give us some of your insights about, first off, what First Children's Finance is. I think that would be helpful for some folks who have not been with the committee through the development of the child care system. So it'd be great if you could start off with a little bit of a background and then tell us your thoughts about 248.
Yes, happy to do that. So I did send to Lori some written testimony as well as a PDF with kind of a lot of data. I wasn't quite sure exactly what all you would want and how much time I had. So I thought I would give you all the data, and you're welcome to ask me any questions. I'm happy to.
Thank
I
you.
have some written testimony that kind of summarizes it. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. And thanks for having me give testimony regarding H248. For the record, my name's Erin Roach. I'm the Vermont Director of First Children's Finance. So a little bit of background about First Children's Finance. We are a national nonprofit, and our mission is to grow the supply and business sustainability of excellent childcare. We provide research and advice to states and federally recognized tribes. We also provide business support and access to capital to childcare businesses. That's what we do all across the country. In Vermont, we opened this office in early 2023, and we provide business training and consulting at no charge to childcare businesses through funding that we get from the state of Vermont. Since the fall of 2023, we have also administered the state's infant and toddler capacity building grant program, which is also sometimes known as Make Way for Kids. And in 2024, last year, we also began several pilot projects, including a planning grant project and a business planning project to help start new childcares in Vermont. And this was through federal funds that were made possible by Let's Grow Kids. So not through state funds, but I thought that might be of interest to the committee. So I just wanted to mention. In addition, I want to also mention that our national team has recently begun doing childcare cost modeling work for the state of Vermont. And there was a report that Deputy Commissioner McLaughlin put into testimony, I think last month, perhaps, of the cost modeling report. And there's also a link in the PDF to that report. So that's cost modeling of childcare in Vermont, and they continue to revise those models, and there'll be a updated model provided, I believe, at the end of the year, end of 2025. Also, First Children's Finance is a community development financial institution, which means that we can lend money under certain conditions. We made our first loan in Vermont earlier this month, and we're really excited to be kind of starting down that journey of making other capital available in Vermont. I'm happy to talk more about that if that's of interest. Anyway, my testimony, my written remarks roughly follow the slides, the PDF of slides that you have in front of you. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to share a little bit about the state of childcare in Vermont and the work of First Children's Finance here in Vermont, especially as it pertains to extraordinary relief funds. So first off, I'll tell you that since we opened our Vermont office, we have led 78 business trainings for childcare business directors or owners. We have engaged with 147 childcare businesses, providing them with one-on-one assistance. In addition, and a lot of that I'll just mention was helping them adapt to Act 76, which was exciting and but required, right? They had a lot of questions, and so we really hit the ground running from the middle of 2023 through now, helping people adjust their business practices to the new law. And we've conducted 63 financial or business model analyses over the last 2 years, most of them in the last year, which is we're pretty excited about the opportunity to do that work. Also, you can see, I guess it's on page 8 in that PDF. Since Act 76, there are more childcare programs and there's more capacity for children, including a 5% increase in infant capacity since Act 76 was enacted. And we continue to see interest in starting new programs and expanding existing programs. Through the first quarter of calendar year 2025, we see right, that's pretty much current. Vermont continues to experience more childcare programs opening than closing. This is the 5th quarter in a row that more childcares have opened than have closed. The percentage of, and then every year we do a survey of childcare businesses. This is our third year doing that survey. And the survey was done at the end of February and early March. So these results are very current. In that survey, we found that more childcare businesses are reporting that they have stable enrollment. And they also have very few openings, not surprisingly. And there's some data in the slides if you would like to dig into that more. But stable enrollment is important because that's their source of revenue, and that's how they plan staffing, that's how they plan other expenses. And so seeing stability increasing has been an important development over the last 3 years. At the same time that they're experiencing stability in enrollment, they are reporting increasing expenses in almost every expense category. Particularly payroll expenses for childcare centers, something like 40% of them reported that their payroll expenses significantly increased last year. And I think that's related to what Sarah Kenny from Let's Grow Kids was just talking about, right? We are seeing compensation increasing either in the form of wages or in the form of additional benefits in order to as a result, they're reporting that they're hiring, fewer of them are experiencing real difficulty in hiring and either not needing to hire or more of them reporting that hiring is easier. So it's important to note that payroll expenses are increasing, but that's meaning that it's easier to hire staff, which we think will in the future mean that we see more openings for children. Also want to mention that later in the slides, there's an aggregate of our financial analyses that show an operating budget, an expense budget for an average childcare center. And it shows that payroll, staffing expenses, makes up about 3/4 of their operating budget. So when payroll expenses are significantly increasing, it really has a big effect on the operating budget of a childcare, and it's unlikely that they can make up for those expenses by cutting other things because payroll is such a very large part of their operating budget. So with that in mind, in this same survey, most centers and after-school programs reported that they expect to raise tuition in 2025. And we believe that is in compensating for those increased payroll expenses. Most of them forecast that their increase in tuition will be less than 10%. And we think that that is a modest increase in tuition. But I wanted to make that clear that that's what we're forecasting for the year ahead. And we think it's really important that these childcares be able to respond to the pressure to increase compensation, to either retain their staff or add staff to care for more children, by being able to adjust their tuition, which is their source of revenue accordingly. Let's see. In other news, thought I'd talk a little bit about our grant program since that seemed to come up in the Deputy Commissioner's testimony last week. Since we administer the Infant and Toddler Capacity Building Grant Program, and we have for 2 years now. This is our almost the end of our second year. So a couple of facts and figures about that. In those 2 years, we have awarded just over $3 million to 112 childcare projects in Vermont. This grant program awards up to $15,000 to family childcare homes and up to $50,000 to childcare centers to increase the number of infants and toddlers that they serve. This can include starting new programs, expanding existing programs, and in a few cases, preserving spaces in programs that might otherwise close. In the first year of the program, we awarded grants to 61 projects. And so far this year, we've awarded grants to 51 projects, and we expect to award 15 to 20 more next month. Applications are due next week, I believe, the end of next week. Last year, this program supported the opening or preserving of over 1,000 spaces. And there are 6 projects that were funded last year that are not yet complete. And they represent as much as 200 more spaces that will come online, we believe, this year, probably late in 2025. And the projects that were funded this year, over 200 spaces are already open. And the remainder that were funded, we expect to open by the end of 2025. In the very end of the data that I provided in the PDF, I included a couple of tables from the cost modeling report that our national team provided to make the point that childcare, even with Act 76, childcare receives slim or negative margins on their business, negative profit margins. And a high percentage rate, as I said before, 75% of their operating budget is, oh, my light went off. I'm not moving enough. 75% of their costs tend to be staffing related costs. So those profit margins being slim, what they pay their staff is important to note. I did want to comment that these extraordinary relief funds in a business that has slim profit margins, it's really important that there be some flexibility and some way to handle extraordinary events that businesses aren't able to absorb immediately. This infant and toddler capacity building grant program isn't really designed to address all extraordinary relief, right? It's really designed to expand capacity for infants and toddlers. So I did note that in the 2 examples that Deputy Commissioner McLaughlin gave last week in her testimony, they are both projects that we were working with. And in one case, I believe, I had to guess a little bit which one she was talking about. In one of them, we had given a grant that helped that program expand that new site. And so when they weren't able to open because of the flooding, it meant that their project was slowed down, right? And we had already given them a grant to start that site. The other one, we had been working with providing technical assistance to help them be ready to absorb the children from the program that was closing. We were able to give them one of these infant toddler capacity grants when they weren't able to be eligible for that extraordinary relief. It was a little, to be candid, it was a little nerve-wracking because the timing of when our grant application was due and when funding would be awarded and announced, it meant that we couldn't guarantee them the funds in that moment, right? They had to apply like everybody else. So there was a little bit of uncertainty in that period of time while they waited. But anyway, it ended up working really well, I think. And we are really proud of that accomplishment of working with the program on both sides to help them not only take the children, but also incorporate the staff from the program that was closing into their existing program. And that felt really important to help them make that transition. Let's see, what else did I want to say here? Oh, I did want to mention that our grant program, it typically takes about 3 months for a program to write their application, get it submitted, us to review it internally, and then there's an external review committee, and then make the final funding decisions. Usually that whole period takes about 3 months. And we think it's really important that we take that time because these are public funds that we're stewarding. And it's just important that everybody be able to apply and really think through what their project is that they're going to be doing and put together a careful budget and a careful timeline, and that we can consider those projects and gather any additional information we might need to make good funding decisions with these public funds. And I also wanted to just mention that while these businesses can apply for loans from our CDFI or from other CDFIs like the Vermont Community Loan Fund, lending decisions also take time, and extraordinary relief might be necessary in a more rapid timeframe. And so anyway, I just wanted you to have all that information about what we're doing in the state and kind of how we see these sort of expense inflationary pressures on these businesses, and how we are really optimistic since Act 76 about all the new programs and new spaces coming online. It has been an amazing time to be doing this work, and I feel incredibly fortunate to be in this position in this moment in time where we're able to really help be part of this solution, and I'm really proud of that. So I guess in closing, I'll say that I'm optimistic that you'll support H248. I think it will help the state comply with the federal rules for childcare financial assistance, and I think it will ensure that the commissioner is able to use the extraordinary relief funds where they will do the most good. I'll also just add that I respectfully hope that the committee will consider using this opportunity to think about the limits from changing the reimbursement and tuition rates subject to the NAICS index, because that index might not always reflect the needs of the state. It might not reflect the needs of the industry, and it may not reflect the needs of individual childcare businesses. I realize I didn't bring any additional language, but happy to discuss that if that's of interest. Anyway, those are my prepared testimony remarks. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Erin. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the information that you provided, also in your slides, and and just with regard to that last point that you made, the department's not requesting any change in that at this point in time, and probably unlikely that we are going to consider a change in that language at this point in time. Appreciate your highlighting the need in certain circumstances to be able to have a quicker response than perhaps First Children Finance is able to do in a situation where financial relief might be necessary to either sustain or react to something that is more imminent, or something that has, a flooding situation, as we've seen in the example, or, I suppose it could be a fire, it could be a relocation, it could be, it could be any number of things. And so we certainly would want to be able to address that, pending a longer term, more sustainable approach that might be done through other financing. Because I was just going to say, because what the state has in this fund is relatively limited. It's not, it's not a huge amount of money, but it could be exactly what somebody might need in order to get them through that 2 or 3 month period of needing to work through financing of an improvement or an insurance claim, or whatever it might be. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify that our process in granting funds is slow. It's not, I don't think it's slow in the world of granting funds, but may seem slow and not immediate, because that's the design of the grant program. We have the ability to grant funds faster, move funds faster if that was ever called for. But the infant and toddler capacity building grant program isn't designed for that. and I'm not suggesting we should be administering this extraordinary relief fund, but we do have the ability to administer funds faster. It's just that with a grant program of the nature of that infant and toddler capacity building program, it's important that we are thoughtful and careful in making those decisions. So I just wanted
Sure.
to clarify that.
Yeah, and no problem. Thank you. Questions? I have one question on the and it's actually with regard to what you were just where did I go? You were just talking about I'm just trying to find it in your in the infant and toddler grant program you were just talking about and awarding over $3 million to 112 childcare projects. And do you have a breakout of what, like of those 112, how many were center-based and how many were family home care providers?
I knew that there would be something that I didn't prepare in advance. I do have that. I don't have it right in front of me. And I wouldn't want to just hazard a guess right here.
Yeah.
I'm happy to follow up with that information.
Okay, I appreciate that.
There have been a sizable number of family childcares, and yeah, I just didn't come prepared to talk about it.
I think that, and this is just for anybody who's preparing data on this topic, it is always helpful for us to see the breakout of family versus, or in addition to center-based, because often our colleagues in the building are asking for that information, and we want to be able to be responsive to that. Representative Bishop.
Regarding that same data point, I was curious if a breakdown is available as to how many are expansions of existing system centers or family locations versus new.
Yep. Also, yes. I don't have that at my fingertips, but
Yes.
I did look up in my notes, and I can tell you that of our current grants, there's 51 of them outstanding right now. 22 of them were for family childcare and 29 were for center. I just grabbed that from my notes, but I'm happy to follow up and send you the existing versus new also.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that the previous breakdown is probably similar, except that there were more projects as far as.
Thank you. Representative Cole.
Thank you, and a major thank you too, especially coming from a childcare center that closed. I used to work for one for a while.
Oh gosh.
It went under. But yeah, I'm curious how you make this work financially, and I know you're experts sort of in drawing down federal funds, and I see like on some of your program highlights, like you utilize like a USDA rural development technical assistance type grant, and I'm just curious like what all the moving pieces like philanthropy as well that are brought in, if that is a relevant piece to make for example like the $3 million that you were able to put into our state work.
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, I guess if you can't be working in childcare, I'm glad that you are working in our legislature. I appreciate your service. Also, my team just texted me that, let's see, there were 24 existing grants to existing programs and 27 were to start new projects. So to answer your question, and
Sure.
big shout out to my team that is apparently watching this on YouTube. They are amazing, and so if I seem defensive about how we are not slow in awarding these grants, I think my just-in-time response maybe illustrates how fast my team does operate. As far as our funding, as far as the grant funding, those funds come from the state of Vermont. It's a state of Vermont grant program. We are providing a pass-through service as well as pretty in-depth technical assistance for those grants in association with them to help make sure those projects are successful. We work really carefully. One of the reasons it takes usually a month for a grant to get submitted is that we work really closely with those applicants. I'm sure you can imagine some of these, right? Some of those startup businesses are people who have maybe never owned a business before, maybe never applied for a grant before. So we work really closely with them to help them learn how to write a grant application, learn how to put together a budget, a timeline, all of those things to be really clear about what their project will be and what they'll be using the funds for to try to submit a competitive application. This year, we have had more applications than we had funds available. So it has become a bit competitive. And that's one of the reasons I said we're seeing continued interest in starting up and expanding programs. So all of those grant funds are state dollars, and that's why we're so careful with how we award them at this point. There are, I mean, we have various projects in the works that may include philanthropic funds or other funds. Our lending capital is not state funds. And we also, this year, I mentioned we did a couple of pilot projects that were federally, that used federal funds. We're finishing those up over the next several months. Anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, so that clarifies. I guess I was misinterpreting the resources there, but thank you. With the financing too, so I see like on your board for some of the loan programs too, you have like a Wells Fargo representative and all. And I'm curious about your relationship with banks. Are you able to offer like lower interest rate loans? Or who do you partner with for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not an expert in our loan program. I can give you a little bit of information, but which is to say that our lending capital comes from a variety of sources, including federal Small Business Administration funds, including some potentially some philanthropic funds. We also re-lend funds, maybe from banks that have right, community investment funds, things like that. I hope that sort of addresses it. We have a loan committee that helps make our lending decisions. They may include representatives from banks. It's a national program. It operates in several states and technically can lend in any state where it's authorized to lend. So it's not a Vermont specific program. We may in the future include some Vermont specific capital in our lending pool, but at this point we haven't done that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative Bishop.
A question about what, they're not numbered, but I believe it's slide 16, overall enrollment is the title of the slide.
Yep.
I'm confused by it. I'm just trying to make some sense. There's reference to percent of license that are empty, which are larger numbers than when I look below the next on that same page, reported open spaces average per month.
Yep. It's a great question. As far as the percents in that table, you might look at the slides 14 and 15, right? Just immediately preceding that. And you can see in all cases, there's a little bit of green, which is our licensed capacity showing over the enrolled, the actual enrollment. And what that means is that, right, licensed capacity is the absolute most you can have. And if you have more children than that, you're in big trouble. In colloquial terms, I'm sure there's a technical term for that, right? You're out of compliance with licensing regulations. And that's a really serious thing. And so programs, we model programs having about 10% capacity at a minimum to account for, children leaving, children starting, changes in schedules, things like that, just to give them a little bit of flexibility. We don't advise people to enroll at their licensed capacity because that can create challenges. And some programs, even though they might be licensed for 30 children, have business preferences to only ever enroll 20 children, right? Depending on their circumstances, or maybe depending on their staffing, which honestly has been the biggest challenge in recent years, is that we hear from a lot of programs that they would add more children, except that they don't have enough staff to adequately care for those children. I hope that answers part of your question. So that's why, when you see percent of license that are empty, it's partly because we would expect that percentage to be not less than sort of 8 to 10%, because they need a little flexibility, but also either preferences of those businesses or staffing considerations or something else that they may have additional capacity right now. At this point, we think it's mostly a staffing challenge. And then the little blue table at the bottom, again, if you refer to the two previous slides, there's an orange line that says the number of open spaces. So that's taking the total number of open spaces at each age category and dividing it by the number of programs. Just to put in context what it means to have that many open spaces, right? We only talked to 219 childcares. There are about 1,000 regulated childcares in the state. And so we wanted to be able to put this number in context. So among these 219 programs, on average, they have capacity for 0.2 infants, 0.3 toddlers, 0.7 preschoolers, and basically 1 school-age child.
So just
That's what they report as having openings for, irrespective of their licensed capacity.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Representative Garofano.
Thank you, Erin. So kind of a follow-up on this. Do you use this data when you review your grants to target the grants that are going out and the slots that are being added to where the need is?
That's a great question. So this is a survey. This data comes from a survey. So we don't necessarily know who's reporting it or where they are, right? They did a survey, and it could be anonymous. Some people did tell us who they are, but so we don't have the ability to translate this survey data into supply and demand, for example. To this point, we have relied on the 2024 Let's Grow Kids supply and demand analysis stalled at the start. We are intending to update or provide a new supply and demand analysis in early 2026 that we think will be able to guide future decisions. We do, however, look at some of the state administrative data that you could see on slides 8, 9, 10, 11 about opens and closes and about number of programs, number of spaces, and some of the age categories of spaces.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness at this time? All right. Erin, thank you so much for being here today and for all the information that you provided and for being a resource to our childcare providers out there.
Yeah, happy to anytime.
It's great. All righty.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, so you're thinking about this. We will take up H248 after the floor today to discuss about whether or not these were our last two witnesses on this, to discuss whether or not we want to make any changes to what is in the current draft. And if we do we have Katie? She is going to be here. Okay. So think about this. We're going to have a short floor today, so we'll be back here pretty quickly. 15 minutes after floor, if you would please come back, that would be great. We have her at 2.
Yeah, she's in a second.
Okay. So but we can have some discussion about what people are thinking about. So, any questions? Do people feel a need for any other testimony on this bill? Okay, alrighty.